Greetings, everyone. Let's take a moment to pause for the amazing cause of love and light as we welcome a nice deep breath in. And if it feels good, to exhale, allowing your eyes to gently soften from the screen, turning inward and recognizing the power and presence of wholeness, the power and presence of oneness, the power and presence of that which I like to call God, but I know this thing that we speak of is so great it cannot be consumed by any one word. It is all words. It is my life. It is your life. It is our lives now. We are one with this great presence that is in the practice of recognizing itself in all of its iterations and expressions. And so we welcome those iterations and expressions to reveal first and foremost in a moment of stillness, inviting us all to pause and invite a personal intention for tonight's gathering. And blessing those individual as well as collective intentions tonight. Let them be fruitful and find their way through that conversation that our brother John has invited tonight. Let our hearts and ears be open to receive, and let our mouths and hearts be open to speak that which is ours to speak. I call this a safe place. I call it a good place. I call it a God space. And I bless the technology that connects us all across this amazing planet. Let us step into the circle of love. Let us step into the conversation of awareness, and let it be led by spirit within and without. And so it is.
Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Dr. Victoria Bomberry. I'm an enrolled member of the Muskogee Nation. In our diversity, equity, inclusion webinars, we start with a land acknowledgement. I am in Riverside, California, so I will name the people where I am living. I acknowledge the Cahuilla people in whose unceded territories I reside. I honor them and respect their rights to live as free people, to have all rights as a sovereign nation, their rights to practice their religion, to develop their economies, to raise their children, to educate their children with full knowledge of who they are and their unique histories. I acknowledge this land and this people with my full support and love. This is Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month, and I acknowledge Native Hawaiian, Samoan, and Chamorro people and their lands and territories. We have people from many different places here, so if you don't know the indigenous people from your area, you can go to nativeland.ca for information. We do this with the intention of understanding the long-standing history that brought you to residing on this land and to understand your place in that history. We are still living with these effects, and we recognize that these effects still marginalize and erase indigenous peoples. Land acknowledgement is not about generating a guilt trip, even though you will invariably find painful truths as you do this research. It is an active process to heal and move forward with integrity. Remember that indigenous peoples are present everywhere. They are not in the past, as my body here on our webinar attests. Take time to learn about your particular place and the indigenous people who are your neighbors.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh, yeah. Rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart. Can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake. All nations rise. Now's your time. I remember the days when our prayers were legal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz y no vamos a escondernos más.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and Creator is sending his very best warriors. And this time, it isn't Indians versus cowboys. No, this time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side, and we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
I said, I'm John Adams. I'm a licensed spiritual practitioner. I have been doing a lot of nonprofit work, DEI work in my experience, and I'm on the DEI committee, of course. And tonight, what I really wanted to do was start a conversation about how we can make our communities more welcoming, how we can make our communities really honor the values that we hold in our hearts. You know, I think probably everybody here has said at some point or another, you know, we honor all the many paths to God. And so we really want to live that, we want to activate that. And sometimes some things can get in the way. And so we want to just talk about some ways in which things can come up that we may not, that may be flying under our consciousness, that may just be learned behaviors or, outdated, outmoded ways of being in community and being in collaboration together. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but first I want to do a little exercise with everybody so we can get to know each other a little bit. And this is an exercise that my friend Nina actually turned me on to. It is called I Am, We Are. And so what I'd like you to do is just take a minute to think about all the different communities that you might belong to. Who are you in that community? So I am a practitioner. I am part of a community of practitioners, and I show up as a very, hopefully jovial, happy camper in the practitioner community, and try to be as good a person at holding that consciousness as possible. I'm a gay man. I'm part of the LGBTQA community. I try to hold that space by, just honoring the history that I carry and sharing that history whenever I'm asked. And there are other places. I'm part of a nonprofit community. I work for a nonprofit, have for many years, and I'm an executive in a nonprofit organization. And so I am a part of a community of executives. And my role in that community is to really bring this consciousness, this spiritual consciousness, this idea that we are one, and this idea that there is peace and love, and centering that in our consciousness. I try to bring that into all the spaces. So that's what I would like all of you to do. Think about the communities that you belong to and how you show up in those communities and what you bring to them. And we're going to put you in breakout rooms so that you can share with each other and just, have a really good conversation. So I really encourage you to let go of your inhibitions. I know sometimes your social anxiety comes up. I say that is, you are free of that right in this very moment. And so it is. And just share from your heart whatever you feel comfortable sharing. That's the prompt. Let's go into our breakouts. So welcome back, everybody. I just wanted to open up the floor here a little bit to get some share outs about how was that experience for you? Did anything come as a surprise? Did you surprise yourself? Does anybody want to share anything from that experience?
I'd like to say it's one of the best breakout meetings I've ever had on Zoom.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And I've been to a lot.
Yeah.
But this was one of the best, probably because it was really based in actual reality and honesty and feeling.
So it was interesting to me, just a small group of 4 of us, but so one of the women in the group was from the opposite end of the country that I am. I'm in Seattle, she's in St. Augustine. And so we had a little chat about that we face similar situations, that we are largely an older, largely white population at our center. And, she asked a couple of questions like, what are we doing unintentionally to be unwelcome? Is there something that we're doing? And how do we look at that differently? And how do we be more intentionally welcoming? So that was really eye-opening for me. I also didn't know that St. Augustine was a center for a lot of the civil rights activities back in the 60s. So that was really eye-opening to me, and gives me hope that even though maybe they're an all-white community now, there's opportunity there that can be capitalized on.
It was fabulous for so many reasons. As practitioners, I believe that we're not afraid to talk, or at least I'm not. I'd never met a microphone I didn't like. And I just find it really clear that we're all coming together for the same purpose. In my work in the world as a 911 dispatcher, I get to see and hear a lot of different stuff from people. And it's a way for me to really be mindful. It's a great job for a practitioner, for sure. I get to be mindful about all the different things that people come to us with. And I get chances 12 hours every day to look at, am I really showing up as who I claim myself to be, or am I being a jerk out there somewhere? And I had great teachers in Barbara and John Waterhouse, and I learned to stay in principle, and that's what I strive to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, those are great teachers. We're going to move into the rest of our program. And what I wanted to share with you and start a conversation with you about the way our society is put together, and out of our practice of just being in this experience of the way our businesses work, our communities work, our organizations work, we can fall into the habit and the learned behavior that is commonly thought of or has been called out as systemic, the systemic supremacy culture. And what I want to talk about are some of the characteristics of that. So they are identifiable. We can identify the characteristics and we can look at them and we can recognize them when we see them. For me, as in my journey with all of this learning is just becoming aware, building that awareness, building that understanding and that vision of seeing it when it shows up. And so what I want to do with what we're going to do this afternoon is looking at some of those characteristics and how they show up. And we're going to look at some of the source material for this, called them antidotes. And I kind of like that word, so I'm going to stick with it for now. Some of the antidotes to those characteristics. And what I'm hoping is that this will spark some inspiration in all of us. You may recognize some things. You may say, well, that one doesn't really show up for me, but this other one really does. So just kind of invite you to stay open to it, and just let's get into some of this material and start talking about it. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about today is defensiveness. So in defensiveness, we can look at things like it can show up as being grounded in the imposter syndrome, not wanting to be seen as a fraud. I can really identify with this. I've often felt like, oh my God, I'm an imposter, and I can get very defensive. I have been down that road before. Criticism of those with power is viewed as threatening and inappropriate. So I know in my day job, I'm going to reference my day job a lot, I have a feeling. In my day job, we've had some of the staff giving feedback to leadership, and I have seen leadership become very defensive. And so what we really want to do is move past that, right? People respond to new or challenging ideas with defensiveness, making it very difficult to raise these ideas. A lot of energy in the organization is spent trying to make sure that people's feelings aren't getting hurt, or tiptoeing around defensive people really limits what you can have in terms of dialogue, conversation. The defensiveness of people in power creates an oppressive culture, right? When you're very defensive, it really constricts and contracts. So the antidotes to these focus on possibility, understanding there's a link between defensiveness and fear, work on releasing your own defensiveness, name defensiveness as a problem, discuss the ways in which defensiveness or resistance to new ideas gets in the way of progress, focus on facilitating the best out of each person, asset-based thinking. I really like this. I've been working on this a lot because in my role at work, I'm a CFO, and that actually, in a small nonprofit, my work carries me into a lot of different arenas, including human resource, and been really looking at our staff and how we can cultivate the skills and experience that they bring to allow them the ability to really use their skills at work, but also to cultivate their potential, and really looking at each person as asset-based. I like it because I'm the finance person, so asset is my language. But anyway, I like asset-based thinking. And then, as Don Miguel Ruiz says in the 4 Agreements, don't take anything personally. I think that's a great antidote to defense, to releasing defensiveness. So defensiveness becomes like the first characteristic that we really wanted to talk about, and how it can show up and how it can kind of block the flow of how things unfold. And I just wanted to stop and see if anybody else wanted to share anything about defensiveness and how it might be showing up, or how to resolve it.
Well, not a sharing, but just a question. Can you speak a little bit on the difference between defensiveness versus creating healthy boundaries?
I think the difference is that when you're being defensive, you are closing yourself off. You're not listening. You're not open. It comes a little bit later in the presentation, but what happens is, for me anyway, is I tend to feel like it is someone's questioning my ability to lead, someone's questioning my ability to do whatever it is I'm trying to do. That's why they're coming at me. rather than saying, it's not about me, it's just an idea, it's just a comment, it's just feedback. In terms of setting boundaries, I think that's where your yes and your no come into play, right? That's where you say, thank you, I appreciate the feedback. But I had a friend who was an actor a long time ago, and he was taking acting classes from this wonderful man named Guy Stockwell, who is Dean Stockwell's brother. And Guy Stockwell was on Quantum Leap, and I mean, Dean Stockwell was on Quantum Leap and stuff. Anyway, Guy was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And Guy would always say to him, you know, criticism, feedback, your head goes this way, up and down, and your head goes this way, back and forth. And you get to choose what you say yes to and what you can do something about and what you say no to, because you know, there's nothing you can do about it. And so you let it go. And to me, that's a little bit more of setting good boundaries. Whereas defensiveness is just, you know, not being open, closing down, and shutting somebody else down in the process.
Yes, hi everyone. Are you asking about defensiveness in terms of because I have a situation with the person reacted in which I was trying to share with them how they had been the microaggressions that they had placed upon me. Would that be correct to share that?
Yes.
Okay. I am African American. I'm sorry, I have my camera off. It goes back and forth, so it's just better. I get better reception with it off. So I approached a person, shared with them. I did a book club for 10 weeks on caste, the origins of our discontent. Wonderful book. I hope you as practitioners read it. And so when microaggressions came up, there were a couple of those who identified as white who felt that they hadn't done microaggressions. And I was, you know, wanted to share with them how I had experienced microaggressions with them. And one particular woman, I shared with her how I felt what she had not done to me, but wanted me to do was microaggression. And she got very defensive about it, saying that she didn't mean any harm, and I know she didn't. I really know she didn't. I knew that she wasn't didn't really understand what she had done in saying this to me, and but her reaction was very defensive. She left the book club. When I called her to talk to her about it some more, she still didn't kind of get it why it was microaggression, you know, and kept apologizing that she meant no harm. And I kept saying, I know you don't mean any harm. I know you just didn't know. That's why we're doing this work, so it can be pointed out to you. But and I was hoping that she and I can talk again, but she didn't want to. And so I had to just let it go. I had to just let it go, and whatever she needs to do for herself is what she needs to do. And that's something that I run into a lot with the defensiveness is it's either this, in the defensiveness is, well, I'm really not like that, you know. I didn't do you know, or that wasn't my intention, which, like I said, I understand that it wasn't, but it did happen, or I don't see how that's microaggression.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Thank you, Carmen. Yeah, I'm sorry that that happened. I think that, you know, one of the things that I think about a lot is intention versus impact. My intention may be benign, might be very, you know, non-threatening or whatever, but my impact, how someone receives it may be very different. And one of the things that I've learned is to respect that. And sometimes it's hard to hear that feedback, but in my experience and what I would suggest is saying, thank you for the feedback, I will do better. And that's one of the points in this antidote that says, you know, we have to release our defensiveness. You know, a lot of this stuff we've just learned, we've just picked up by osmosis, by being in this particular society at this particular time. Yeah, of course you didn't mean any harm, but you did harm. So just know that and do better. Yeah.
So in the chat, John, P. Rossman says, as a person of color in a professional field that doesn't have a lot of people of color in leadership, I feel like I get labeled as being defensive often, when in my perspective, I'm experiencing situations differently from some of my colleagues. But I do work on trying not to come off as so defensive. But usually that ends up with me not expressing my ideas or thoughts of certain situations. So
yeah, that's how we shut down the conversation, right? Yeah. And so what we're doing here tonight is, with all of us, is becoming aware of that we may be culprits in that, and to just be more aware, to be more open, to be less defensive, to listen, and to be welcoming of this feedback and this input, so that we can make our spaces more welcoming and make our communities more welcoming, right?
I was just going to say that sometimes the defensiveness is because I don't know how to respond, and I'm buying time.
Yeah.
You know, to think about, you know, what would be the appropriate thing, or I move into judgment of myself often. And so I'm sitting there in judgment of myself and trying to process that within my own brain. So I liked what you said about just saying thank you and nothing more at that moment, because right before you said that, I was thinking, what language could I use for myself, as inwardly as well as outwardly, to be able to give myself that time to process a need for a change that is brand new.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you.
The defensiveness can also show up as the person realizing when you try to talk with them, and then being so embarrassed and feeling humiliated that it damages the relationship. I had a situation come up with someone who's a friend. We care about each other. So we were treating each other with that tenderness and care. And I was expressing how what she was saying was landing with me. I'm multiracial and was raised multicultural, meaning in my formative years, I experienced life in all three cultures. And we were in a conversation about that, and it was tender and it was kind. But when she realized, when she got it, when that light bulb went off, she burst into tears and ran away. And I have tried a number of different things to mitigate that. And we're back to being friendly. We're back to, but we're not anywhere close to being back to where we were. And it's not about my forgiveness. She can't cope with having made that kind of a mistake. And I would love to hear what others might be doing around kind of the flip side of this, where we've gotten away from this and pushing this away to, oh my God, I've let it in and I have no tools internally to be with that.
Yeah, I
Thank
think,
you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm not going to try and offer tools tonight, but we'll think about that and maybe think about how we can share that out in terms of, that exact experience, because we want to hold everybody, as you said, tenderly and with love. And we don't want to hurt the people we love. So we got to figure that out. Right.
Well, I want to help them. I want to help them be okay that they made a mistake. She didn't know better.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
want to give us two sentences. The first one is thank you, and the second one is tell me more. And then be quiet
Yeah.
and
Tell me.
listen and receive. Because what we're dealing with, what P. Rosman pointed out, in most places, the culture is predominantly white, and there are assumptions about how actions should happen.
Mhm.
And so to have the courage to say something and then be shut down it can drive you out of a place, and it is because of the power structure. So we're all a bunch of white people, most of us, those of us who are white people, are in a culture that tells us that our values, that our idea of what culture is the default.
Mhm.
But it is actually a culture of domination. It's a culture of imperialism. And so it isn't just, oh, geez, something happened. Let me see if we can both feel good about it. It's like, this is a moment where the universe is telling me I need to be educated. And so tell me more. And then being silent, not, I didn't mean anything, just being silent is what we have to offer the person who's had the courage to make those statements, to make that, whatever it was that happened.
Thank you so much. That's beautifully said. Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is the willingness to change, the willingness to hear it and make a change so that we don't keep doing the same things over and over and wounding the same people over and over. So we're going to talk about power hoarding. So this is the idea of not sharing power, but holding power very personally and very close. So in power hoarding, we see that little value is given to sharing power. You see that power is seen as limited, only so much to go around. Those with power feel threatened when anyone suggests changes in how things are done in the organization and/or feels that suggestions for change are a reflection on them, on their leadership or lack of leadership. Those with power assume they have the best interests of the organization at heart, assume those wanting change are all, and anybody wanting change is ill-informed, emotional, or inexperienced. The antidotes that are suggested include power sharing in your organization's value statements. I think this is a very good idea to really set some values and articulate them and then activate them, right? Understand that a good leader develops power and skills in those around them. Develop a sense of peace and knowing change is inevitable and challenges to your leadership can be healthy and productive. You know, healthy feedback, constructive feedback, everybody needs it. Make sure the organization prioritizes the mission over protecting people in power. So stay focused on why we're all there. Make your decision-making process transparent. So one of the things that I experience is not making decisions transparent. A lot of times decisions are just sort of show up and people are all like, why is that? So I think making decisions transparent is really helpful, but I do think that for example, at my spiritual center, Cityside in Chicago, we operate with a collaborative leadership style, and it works very well. And so it invites in a lot of feedback and a lot of voices, and it's inclusive to allow and to make sure that we are no decision is being made unilaterally. It's a little bit different because in spiritual communities, historically anyway, it's been sort of the minister and everything flows from there, right? And this is inviting in an idea that sharing that out, finding a way to move through sharing power. One of the places that I volunteer at is the Night Ministry in Chicago. It provides homeless shelter and homeless programs for homeless folks or unhoused folks. And one of the things that they do is they have a process, in fact, I can even share it with you, it's called rapid decision making. It's a formal kind of process, but what I like about it is that it allows you to have a process. So if anybody's wondering, how did you make this decision? You have a process where they gather information, they have input from lots of different places, they take all of this and process it, assimilate it, and then they make a decision. And the other thing about this process is that different people take different roles. And so, for example, if we're looking at new space for my day job, and so the person that's really in charge, the person who's going to make that decision is actually one of our program directors. It's not the executive director, it's not the board, they're the ones who are going to make the decision. They've been given that authority. And then all the rest of us are providing input, facts, and ideas and suggestions and just sharing. And ultimately that person's going to make the decision. And the next decision that we make, that'll go to somebody else, and we'll all play a different role in that decision-making process. So it's interesting. So with power sharing, I think this is one of the things in spiritual community that can be very difficult to broker, because so much just kind of focuses in on the minister as being the final word on so many key decisions.
So you seem to be talking in general terms about a culture and a workspace that, I'm sorry about that, a workspace that seems to be, collaborative with making decisions and everybody having their different roles and different things like that. As an African American working with nothing but white people who tries to say things, and I'm not always, who does say things and do provide ideas, they're not always rejected, but there's sometimes this this attitude, a supremacist attitude of I don't know what I'm talking about, or surprised that I know what I'm talking about, or and I was kind of a rookie when I came in, so I had some training among a couple of other individuals who had been at my job longer, who after 5 years still feel the need to say that's not right or that's not okay in a way that's not all right and not okay. In other words, not in a way that's respectful. Yeah. And because your title is systemic white supremacy culture. So with your share, I was kind of confused on, as a white man, I don't kind of get what you're saying, how this relates to, and I understand the powers that be, but I didn't quite understand your story and how it relates to, someone shutting you down or not taking you seriously for what you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
Okay,
Sorry about that. Yeah, that the way you illustrated it was much better than the way I did. One of the things that I should have said at the beginning, but I will say now, is that, there's a lot of wisdom in the room, and that's why I'm facilitating a conversation. I'm not trying to assert myself as an expert. I have my experiences, but I really want to pull out the wisdom in the room. So thank you so much for sharing that. That was very clear.
So my thoughts on that is you were presenting some ideas that were those ideas for for all individuals in a setting like that, and presenting from our work. What did you say? I wish the slide was up. The work values and coming from a place of transparency and all that. Were you sharing that for that?
Yeah, so I think that, the experience that I've had with it and doing DEI work has been that identifying where power has been centered in one particular person, and exactly the scenario that you outlined, that feedback and is from others, or sharing it out, trying to share the power out with others, can be met with disrespect, can be met with, you don't know what you're talking about, and so forth. So I think you're presencing that very well. I think when in the antidotes that are suggested here, including power sharing and values, it helps everybody understand that that's the value, that's what you're valuing. And I think even just the process of having the conversation of creating the values can surface a lot of these kinds of issues.
John, I'm wondering if one of the questions, feel free to clarify if I'm not capturing this correctly. What we're looking at is white supremacy as the substrate from which all of this culture arises.
Yeah.
And I think that what John is pointing out is that everyone is a victim of this white supremacy that's systemic throughout all of our institutions and organizations. And then we're adding the layer of, if you happen to not fall into the norms of white supremacy, if you're not white, or if you're not culturally white, then you will be even more oppressed by this system than others might be. But everyone in this system is a victim of white supremacy in some sense, the culture of white supremacy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just reading. Thank you. That's beautiful. Laura put in the chat, rather than saying,
Yeah,
I'd say we all have roles to play in holding up the system. And when we become aware of them, we can work to change them.
absolutely. I
Yes.
agree, Laura, wholeheartedly. Absolutely.
Thing to add on that, and it is, as a white person, one of the things for me is to recognize that things are coming at us we have our lens. Everybody has our lens. White supremacists have their lens. Everybody has the lens that they have that is causing us to respond in different ways. So my idea is to take a non-threatening example. And so, for instance, here's one of them. My mom was a teacher, and she had this kid that drew the weirdest art, and she just thought he was so specific, but it was weird, and she didn't understand it. When he drew homes, it didn't make sense. When he drew people, it didn't make sense. He drew people with 6 fingers on each hand. He drew his home, and that didn't look like a home to my mom. And I looked at that and I said, Mom, that's a picture of his home from up above. He must, come down a driveway. And it was true. And he was a kid that had 6 fingers, and his family had that genetic thing. And what happened is it was always taken off. Okay, so he had 6 fingers. He knew about 6 fingers. He knew about his home, and his favorite thing was coming down into his driveway. So, and seeing the home from up above, like he was in an airplane. So that kind of thing is to recognize that is a lens. We have a lens all the time, and we have no idea what everybody else's lens is. So I just wanted to say about bias and everything, that's, a recognition, and we can bring it with something that is non-threatening, that can show someone what they might be able to see.
I just wanted to read what Laura put in the chat. I also learned in my own bias training that we are all biased, socialization, culture, etc., all contribute. And when we become aware of those biases, we can choose how we act by, but saying we are unbiased would largely be untrue. It's funny that that you make that comment, because Lynn Daniels and I did a presentation on unconscious bias at the practitioner conference back in October. Just made me think of that. That's interesting.
Couple of things. If you live long enough, you'll get to know ageism, which I'm dealing with right now. I work part-time in a cinema where most of the employees are in high school.
Yeah.
And so just communicating with someone on a whole other age group is something, I wanted some help with, handling that. But when I was in college, my girlfriend and I, we're both white, started an international club. And, we were just, englamored with the world, and what it attracted was a lot of international students. And found out there was a whole contingent of African students. And if they were able to make it over to the United States from Africa, they came from very well-to-do families. In fact, one of the students said he was the son of a chief. And, it really opened your eyes. And there was a civil war going on in their country at the time that he was there. And this is in the 60s. And they hadn't communicated with their families for a couple of years. And I remember there was another student that was from Mexico and who was very combative. And he felt that, actually California belonged to Mexico. And if you look back in history, that actually was true. But, I'm just, right now I'm dealing with ageism. So, I would like some tips on, how do I make myself and the people I'm dealing with at work more comfortable being there from another generation than I am. But that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm actually writing it down so I don't forget. It's interesting. When we started, I asked you to share community and who you are in your community, and age is certainly one of them. It can fall into some of these isms that we experience, right? One of the things about that we are exercise also is that what's interesting is, and I don't know if this happened with you all, but most of the time white people don't identify themselves as being white, part of a white community, part of a white race. Whereas I think other people perhaps do. I just think it's an interesting way in which we assume that that's the default. Somebody said that earlier. I'd like us to go back into breakouts for some conversation just about everything we've talked about so far, and just a little bit of more one-on-one connection. So I just invite you to come together, all the things we've been talking about and more, whatever you feel like sharing. So I want to just take a few minutes, as we're getting ready to wrap up. What I want to share with you is that, this has been such a phenomenal conversation, and I really love hearing all your voices, and I want to hear even more of you speak into the room. What we're talking about is continuing this during the summer. So we'll have an ongoing conversation. We only got through a couple of the characteristics. There are a lot more to talk through. Different members of the committee will step up and facilitate and so forth. So it won't be just me. You won't have to put up with me. But we do have some really brilliant people on our committee who will share and can facilitate in a beautiful way. So we're going to continue the conversation throughout the summer, and I hope you'll come back and bring your genius, bring your ideas, bring your issues and things that have come up for you. And, let's just keep talking to each other, and let's keep moving this forward and spreading the love and spreading the change. I just want to open the room and see if anybody else has any last minute things they want to share. We have time for like one or two quick shares at the end here.
I live my life not letting the outside define me, but the inside. And I'm a minority somewhere and a majority somewhere, but I'm always me here now, regardless of what anyone else anywhere thinks me. And poop to them if they don't get it. I'm going somewhere else. Because somewhere somebody will, and I'm not quitting.
Good for you. Yeah, and we're not quitting either. We're just going to keep having these conversations. We're really going to change the world. And I'm glad you're here with me, helping me change the world.
So beautiful, blessed people. Just so grateful for this opportunity for us to come together and have these brilliant, courageous conversations where we are open and loving and accepting of everyone, because we truly do believe that we are here to create a world that works for everyone. So again, I'm just so thankful for the time that you've spent. I'm thankful for John and the knowledge that he has put forth, and thankful to every single one of you who's taken the time out of your day, your evening to be here with us. I just send blessings and love, knowing that it's all good as we continue to grow. And so it is.